said, unfortunately, Dad, I'm on the road. It's Father's Day today. I wish I was home with my family.
Now I know that I love you. I miss you.
Imagine a world where tranquility reigns supreme, where families sleep soundly and the night whispers its gentle lullaby. But as we know, even the most peaceful nights can hide the darkest secrets. It was a calm June night in suburban Atlanta. Inside their new Fayetteville home, Chris Benoit, his wife, and their 7-year-old son were settling in for the evening. To their neighbors, the Benoits seemed like the perfect family. Chris, a mild-mannered Canadian professional wrestler, Nancy, a doting mother, and little Daniel, wise beyond his years. But behind closed doors, tensions were rising in the Benoit household. Chris' demanding wrestling schedule was taking its toll, not just physically with his many injuries, but mentally and emotionally. The pressures of life on the road, Nancy's own fragile health, and caring for a special needs child were straining their relationship. That fateful night in June, something finally snapped in Chris. In a rage, he took out his frustrations on the people closest to him. Over the next 24 hours, a darkness fell over the Benoit home. Chris hid what was left of his wife and child, erasing all traces of the viciousness that had occurred. To the outside world, nothing seemed amiss with the picture-perfect family. But the monster inside Chris was now fully unchained. The loving family man was gone, replaced by a cold, calculated executioner. How could such horror unfold in a quiet suburb? What drove the respected wrestler into an unfathomable darkness from which he could never return? The placid roads of Fayetteville, Georgia held a secret, and soon that mystery would shock the world. Join us as we journey into the abyss, where innocence is stolen, lives are lost, and a community is left to grapple with the unimaginable. This is the story of Chris Benoit and the harrowing events that unfolded on those fateful days. Hello guys, and welcome back to Crime Echo, where we break down some of the most chilling true crime cases from every corner of the globe, providing you with the most recent and in-depth information. If this sparks your interest, we would be delighted if you could subscribe to the channel. Also, giving this video a like significantly supports the channel's growth. We appreciate your help. Now, grab a blanket to hide behind, and let's dive into today's interesting case. Nestled within a quiet cul-de-sac on an unremarkable street, the modest 2-story house at 123 Parkland Circle hid the grim scene that was about to unfold behind its cheery yellow exterior. Fayetteville, a town located just south of Atlanta, was home to around 200,000 residents and offered the perfect picture of serenity. But behind closed doors, one family was about to experience something unspeakable. It was here that one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time, the rabid Wolverine Chris Benoit, called home with his wife Nancy and their son Daniel. Regarded as one of the most talented in-ring performers of his generation, Benoit was admired by fans and respected by his peers. But over that dark weekend, the gentle giant they knew and the man who brought them such joy in the ring would commit actions none could have foreseen. Christopher Michael Benoit was born in Montreal, Quebec on May 21, 1967. His parents, Michael and Margaret Benoit, had a turbulent marriage, divorcing when Chris was still a young child. Chris lived with his mother in Edmonton, Alberta following the divorce. As a child, Chris idolized larger-than-life wrestlers like Bret Hitman Hart and the Dynamite Kid. He trained to become a professional wrestler himself, traveling to Calgary to study under the legendary Hart family. His technical expertise earned him the nickname the Crippler early in his career. Benoit married his first wife Martina in 1997 and had 2 children, David and Megan. But the marriage was strained by Benoit's demanding wrestling schedule and ended in divorce in 2000. Seems sad, but by the end of this video, you tell that was a great outcome for both. In 2000, Benoit also began working for World Wrestling Entertainment (WWE), quickly rising through the ranks to become one of the company's top stars. His exciting in-ring performances earned him legions of loyal fans who admired his tenacity and skill. It was in WWE that Benoit met Nancy Sullivan, who performed as Woman and managed wrestlers. Though Nancy was married to wrestler Kevin Sullivan at the time, she and Benoit began an affair, and Nancy divorced Sullivan in 1997. Chris and Nancy married 3 years later in 2000, combining their families in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2003, their son Daniel was born. Those closest to them remarked at what a loving, doting father Chris was to little Daniel. But trouble brewed beneath the surface. Away from the ring, Benoit was increasingly volatile. Nancy's sister, Sandra Toffaloni, later recounted how Chris constantly complained of headaches and memory loss. Medical tests would reveal severe advanced chronic traumatic encephalopathy (CTE), likely caused by years of untreated concussions. Benoit also overused anabolic boosters to bulk up his physique. Though he had passed WWE's tests, Chris obtained extra boosters from shady personal sources. The combination of mental deterioration from CTE and roid rage from the boosters created the perfect storm within Benoit. Nancy herself suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome and nerve damage that left her in constant pain. Caring for a special needs child only compounded the stress. In May 2003, Nancy filed for divorce, accusing Chris of DA and boosters use. But she withdrew the petition in August, determined to reconcile for their son's sake. Behind closed doors, though, their marital problems continued to fester. The night of June 22, 2007 began just like any other for the Benoits. After Nancy cooked dinner, Chris left for the gym in his blue pickup truck at 5:52 p.m. When Chris returned home at 3:48 a.m., he entered his 7-year-old son Daniel's room. As the boy slept soundly under his favorite Lion King blanket, Chris put him to sleep him with stuff he had been prescribed for his own anxiety. Once Daniel was not conscious, Chris ended the helpless child by pinning a towel over his nose and mouth. Daniel's small self showed no signs of struggle. Chris then made his way to the office where Nancy was working on the computer. There, he launched at her, striking her repeatedly before binding her with electrical cables and duct tape. A makeshift cloth gag was jammed into her mouth to stop her cries for mercy. With his wife fully under control, Chris carried out the ultimate betrayal, slowly ending Nancy with his bare hands. What was left of her was later discovered, a chilling calling card left nearby in the form of a Bible. Over the next day, Chris arranged them, placed Bibles beside them, and composed cryptic final text messages to create an elaborate facade before he ended his own self. But why did Chris Benoit snap? What drove a respected family man to his end? As the investigation went deeper, a tale of mental illness, boosters overuse, and desperation would unravel. When Benoit failed to appear at that weekend's shows, concerned colleagues filed a missing persons report. On Monday, June 25th, police arrived at 123 Parkland Circle to conduct a welfare check. Their worst fears were realized upon finding what was left of Nancy, Daniel, and finally Chris, who had ended himself in his weight room in a last act of cowardice. On the afternoon of Monday, June 25th, WWE host Chavo Guerrero grew worried when Benoit missed a live wrestling event, citing a family emergency. After repeated unanswered calls, Guerrero contacted the Fayetteville police to check on the Benoit home. When officers entered, they were met with a dreadful scene. The rotting you-know-what of Nancy and Daniel Benoit were found in their beds, Bibles laid gently beside them. Upstairs in his home gym, Chris Benoit was discovered dangling from his weight machine, a Bible also near his feet. World Wrestling Entertainment was shocked by the news,
recognizing the career of Chris Benoit. However, now some 26 hours later, the facts of this horrific tragedy are now apparent.
That evening, as fans packed Christie's American Bank Center for Monday Night Raw, they were informed of the tragedy by Mr. McMahon himself. In the subsequent days, analyses were performed on what was left of them, revealing details about Nancy and Daniel's final moments. Tox reports showed Chris was being influenced by alcohol and boosters.
Chris was a great guy, and he was an honorable guy. Like, if I had to leave my kids with somebody for the weekend on an emergency, I would have no problems leaving them with Chris.
Journals found in the home detailed Chris' inner turmoil. One entry read, "I'm a monster." Chris had confided in friends for years about ending thoughts and bots to end others, which they dismissed as hypothetical. Tox reports showed a potentially dreadful cocktail of testosterone and a booster starting with X in his system. Chris was heavily dependent on boosters to cope with his CTE symptoms and emotional distress. Text messages on Nancy's phone showed Chris had been monitoring her conversations, paranoidly accusing her of cheating on him. The messages grew more ominously hostile in the days before her endings occurred. Chris' web searches also portrayed his plans, including looking up ways to break not legs but necks days before the incident. With CTE deteriorating his brain and judgment, psychiatric experts believe Chris sadly lost touch with reality. But many questions still remain unanswered. What was the final blow that caused Chris to end his family that night? Were there warning signs that were ignored? And could this terrible night have been prevented if Chris' mental illnesses were better addressed? While the investigation continues, one thing is clear. Behind the character Chris played on TV was a deeply troubled man. In a sport that demands toughness, he kept his struggles bottled up until it exploded. The Benoit misfortune exposed the dark underbelly of professional wrestling, its rampant DA, untreated head trauma, and lack of mental health support. It marked a turning point for the industry's safety reforms. But it was too late to save Nancy, Daniel, and Chris. In the end, a loving wife, an innocent child, and a respected wrestler were gone. All that remained were the memories of who they once were, before this incomprehensible darkness consumed a family. In the wake of all this, many questions lingered with one being. Was roid rage to blame, or were there deeper issues beneath the surface? The media speculation ran rampant, but one factor appeared significant: chronic traumatic encephalopathy (CTE). Benoit suffered numerous untreated concussions over his wrestling career, resulting in severe CTE brain damage found during analysis of what was left of him. CTE causes loss of impulse control, paranoia, aggression, and memory loss. PM tests showed Benoit's brain resembled an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient. Leading CTE experts concluded that repetitive head concussions was the root cause of Benoit's mental unsoundness. But the WWE publicly challenged the CTE claims, arguing there was no solid proof linking Benoit's brain damage to his actions. They believed other factors like those special boosters we talked about, personal problems, and mental illness motivated his actions. Nancy's sister, Sandra Toffoloni, later revealed that Chris constantly complained of headaches and memory loss. She believed a psychotic breakdown due to CTE was the cause, not deliberate premeditation. Nonetheless, Chris' own words painted a dark descent into evil. Journals found in the home stating, "I'm a monster," and described wanting to end it all, showed he fixated on thoughts about ending people. The tragic story of Chris Benoit has many complex layers. While CTE appeared to be a central factor, his untreated mental illnesses, boosters' overuse, and failing marriage all contributed to an inevitable, if not understandable, loss of morality and humanity. In the end, there are no satisfactory answers, only more questions. Could intervention have prevented this? Can the wrestling industry change to protect other performers from meeting Benoit's fate? The legacy of Chris Benoit serves as a cautionary tale of untreated trauma, the consequences of excessive ferocity for entertainment, and the importance of mental health care. While the motives behind such darkness may never fully come to light, the spirit of Nancy and Daniel reminds us that good must prevail in humanity. Before you leave, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell. This will ensure you stay informed about the latest true crime cases we uncover. We're grateful to have you as part of our community as we explore the captivating mysteries that continue to fascinate us all. Stay curious and vigilant that even closed books still hold untold pages waiting patient revelation. Thank you for joining us, and we eagerly anticipate seeing you in our next exploration. Until next time.